Naples, Italy, January 1962. Lucky Luciano sat in his favorite cafe overlooking the bay, espresso cooling in front of him, when a young American reporter rushed in waving a newspaper. "Mr. Luciano! Mr. Luciano! Have you seen this?" The headline screamed, "Lucky Luciano dead at 64. Mob boss dies in Naples." Luciano looked at the paper, looked at the reporter, and did something nobody expected. He smiled. And what happened in the next 48 hours would prove that even in death, Lucky Luciano was 10 steps ahead of everyone else. January 26, 1962. Charles Lucky Luciano had been living in exile in Italy for 16 years. Deported from America in 1946 after helping the U.S. government win World War II, he'd settled into a quiet life in Naples. Quiet, but never powerless. From his apartment overlooking the Mediterranean, Luciano still pulled strings in the American underworld. A phone call here, a message there, careful instructions sent through trusted couriers. He wasn't the boss anymore, but he was still Lucky Luciano. The cops knew it, the FBI knew it, and most importantly, his enemies knew it. That morning, Luciano's routine was the same as always. Wake at 7 a.m., strong coffee, scan 3 newspapers, Italian, French, and the International Herald Tribune, then a walk to Café Gambrinus for espresso and pastries. He was 64 years old, but still sharp, still watching, still calculating. At 9:15 a.m., he was halfway through his second espresso when Tony Bender, a young reporter from the New York Herald, came sprinting through the cafe doors. The kid was out of breath, sweat on his forehead despite the cool January air. "Mr. Luciano, sir, there's been a mistake, a huge mistake." Luciano set down his cup slowly. His bodyguard, Salvatore, moved closer, hand drifting toward his jacket, but Luciano waved him off. "What mistake?" Tony thrust a newspaper onto the table. The International Herald Tribune, morning edition. The headline dominated the front page. "Lucky Luciano, dead. Legendary mob boss dies of heart attack in Naples. FBI confirms death." Luciano picked up the paper, read the first paragraph, then the second. The article cited sources in the FBI, quotes from Italian police, even a statement from the Naples coroner's office confirming that Charles Luciano had died of a massive heart attack at approximately 2 a.m. that morning. Salvatore leaned in. "Boss, what the hell is this?" Luciano didn't answer immediately. He read the entire article, word by word, his face completely expressionless. When he finished, he folded the newspaper, set it down, and did something that made everyone in the cafe stop and stare. He started laughing. Not a chuckle, a full, genuine laugh that echoed through the room. Tony Bender stood frozen. "Mr. Luciano, this isn't funny. Someone reported you dead. The whole world thinks you're dead." Luciano interrupted, still smiling. "The whole world thinks I'm dead." "Yes. Don't you want to call someone? Correct the record? This is—" Luciano held up one hand. The laughter stopped, but the smile remained. "Kid, sit down." Tony hesitated, then pulled out a chair. Luciano leaned back, lit a cigarette, and watched the smoke curl toward the ceiling. "You ever hear the story about the Chinese general who burned his own ships before battle?" Tony blinked. "What?" "Sun Tzu. Ancient Chinese general, brilliant strategist. When his army landed on enemy shores, he ordered his men to burn their own ships. No escape, no retreat. Fight or die. You know what happened? They won? They won every single battle. Because when you got no way out, you fight smarter, you fight harder, you see things you didn't see before." He tapped the newspaper. "This right here, this is my ships burning." Tony looked completely lost. Salvatore, however, was starting to understand. A slow grin spread across his face. Luciano continued, "For 16 years, I've been stuck in this country. Can't go home, can't touch American soil. But I still got connections, still got influence, and that makes me dangerous." He took a drag from his cigarette.
Problem is, dangerous men get watched. The FBI's got an agent outside my building right now. My phone's tapped, my mail gets opened, every person I meet with gets photographed. I can't sneeze without J. Edgar Hoover writing a report about it. He pointed to the headline. But a dead man? Nobody watches a dead man. The silence that followed was profound. Tony Bender's eyes went wide as the implications hit him. Oh my God, you're going to let them think you're dead. Not let them think, make them believe. Salvatore was already nodding. The FBI, the cops, the families back in New York, they all see that headline. They stop watching. They close the file. Exactly, Luciano said. For the first time in 16 years, I'll be invisible. And in my business, invisible means powerful. Tony pulled out a notepad, reporter instincts kicking in. How did this even happen? Who made the mistake? Luciano's smile grew wider. Nobody made a mistake, kid. I made a phone call. The room went silent. Tony's pen stopped midair. You called in your own death? 3 days ago, I had Salvatore here call the Naples police. Anonymous tip. Said there was a body at the harbor that matched my description. Same age, same build, same scars. He tapped his cheek where a faint scar ran from his eye to his jawline. Had one of my people pay a morgue attendant to confirm the identification without actually seeing the body. Then had another associate tip off the FBI in Rome. By the time the story hit the wires, 4 different sources had confirmed Charles Luciano was dead. Tony was speechless. Salvatore couldn't stop grinning. But, Tony finally managed, what about your family, your friends? Don't they need to know you're alive? Luciano's expression softened slightly. The people who matter already know. I called my sister in New York last night, told her she's going to read something upsetting, but not to worry. She understood. He stubbed out his cigarette. Everyone else, they'll figure it out eventually, or they won't. Either way, I'll be working. Working on what? Luciano stood up, dropped cash on the table for his espresso. On moving money, on settling old debts, on taking care of problems I couldn't touch before because too many people were watching. He buttoned his coat. He picked up the newspaper, folded it under his arm. You think Frank Costello's happy right now? Vito Genovese? All those guys back in New York who've been waiting for me to die so they can grab what's mine? They just started celebrating, started making moves, started showing their hands. And while they're doing that, while they're distracted, I'm going to clean house. Tony stood up, still processing. How long are you going to stay dead? As long as it's useful. Could be a week, could be a month, could be longer. He turned toward the door, then paused. You want a real story, kid? Don't write about my death. Wait. Watch what happens next. Watch who moves. Watch who talks. Watch who makes a play for power thinking the old man's gone. He smiled one more time. That's when you'll see the real snakes are. For the next 48 hours, the world mourned Lucky Luciano. Newspapers around the globe ran obituaries. The FBI officially closed their surveillance file. In New York, the 5 families held quiet meetings, dividing up territory and influence they assumed was now up for grabs. Vito Genovese, who'd been scheming for years, made his move. He called a meeting of the commission, positioning himself as the new power in the Italian underworld. But on January 28th, exactly 48 hours after the death announcement, something strange happened. A Western Union telegram arrived at Vito Genovese's social club in Little Italy. It was addressed to Genovese personally. The message was short. Reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated. We need to talk. Lucky.
Genovese went pale. Within an hour, 3 more telegrams arrived at different locations. One to Frank Costello, one to Carlo Gambino, one to Tommy Lucchese, all with the same message. The panic was immediate. The families realized they'd been played. Every move they'd made in the last 48 hours, every conversation, every deal, every betrayal, Luciano had been watching. Or, more accurately, his people had been watching and reporting back. Tony Bender got his story. Not about Luciano's death, but about his resurrection, and about the 15 men who lost their positions, their territories, and in some cases their lives, because they'd shown their true colors during those 48 hours when they thought the king was dead. Lucky Luciano lived for another 5 years after that. He died for real in 1962, but during those years he never forgot the lesson he'd taught everyone with that fake death announcement. Power isn't about being seen. It's about knowing when to disappear. And when you come back stronger, because you know exactly who your enemies are. Years later, Meyer Lansky would tell associates, Lucky didn't just fake his death, he weaponized it, turned it into the greatest intelligence operation the mob ever ran. And the beautiful thing? His enemies did all the work for him. Luciano kept that newspaper clipping for the rest of his life, the one that declared him dead. He framed it, hung it in his apartment in Naples. Visitors would ask about it, confused, and Luciano would smile that same smile he'd smiled in the cafe. That's the day I learned something important. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let people think you're finished, because that's when they stop being careful. That's when they make mistakes, and that's when you win. If this story of cunning, strategy, and the death that never was inspired you, hit that subscribe button and drop a like. Share this with someone who needs to hear about the man who turned his own obituary into a weapon. And let me know in the comments, what would you do if the world thought you were dead? Keep thinking 10 steps ahead, and I'll see you in the next one.